when it comes to WWE merchandise. If I felt like this is old news, but it's new news, right? So many years ago, WWE put out that they were no longer going to be selling physical media like DVDs and Blu-ray DVDs. And if you go to WWE shop, they haven't in many, many years. But when I go to Walmart or a local store, they still make them. And I don't mean they make them. And I think they stopped, I guess, making compilations, the best of Bret Hart and Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan and the rise and fall of ECW. Yeah, we haven't seen them, and we haven't definitely seen WWE advertise physical media since, probably 10 years ago. But at Walmart, they still put out WrestleMania on DVD, Elimination Chamber, whatever pay-per-view events still are on DVD, right? Without the best of, just, the pay-per-view, right? And they've been still producing them, I guess, without any sort of, fanfare, right? It's not like I said, WWE isn't announcing that they've been making them. They've just been quietly making them. Yeah. But apparently now they have decided they will officially stop after this calendar year, 2023, making DVDs, whether very publicly or even privately, just still producing them for Walmart. They're just going to stop in general. It's over with. WrestleMania 40 ain't going to be on DVD or Blu-ray DVD next year. So quickly, what is your take on WWE stop making DVDs? I get it. We all have like the WWE Network, but, for a collector's sake, for WrestleMania, whatever, it's kind of a blow for those people. What do you think about that?
To me, honestly, I almost forgot that they sold them at Walmart still. That's how often I've ever bought a DVD or anything like that.
Oh, I definitely haven't bought one in 20 years.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's not something I miss. But you made that great point just before I jumped in here, where there's a lot of people that collect things like that, and for the collectors out there, like okay, like they may have the first 39 WrestleManias on DVD. And now they can't get the 40th. So it's like, I get that part of it, but like, that's a very niche thing. And I feel like with the amount of money they would spend to put DVDs together, it's probably not worth the money for them to do it. I mean, as we were talking about in the pre-show, they're talking about doing some other things that are considered budget cuts with the way they're going to be scheduling now upcoming potentially.
Also, Mark Shapiro brought up in a recent conference call with a media, I think it was like a media conference call interview. It wasn't, like the revenue kind of conference call we're used to. It was more just like an interview style. He works for TKO, and he was talking about WWE scaling back on house shows. He's talking about a lot of the positives that go with house shows, and how they go to markets, that other places don't go. So I guess my thing when it comes to scaling back on house shows, a question I will bring to you, Brandon, is when it comes to scaling back on house shows, should the house shows that they do have, should they be in markets in which don't ever get televised shows, like really only have house shows in the smallest markets, or should the smallest markets be the ones eliminated? Meaning you have, let's say Buffalo and Bangor, Maine, right? Buffalo is going to get a Monday Night Raw probably once a year. Bangor, Maine is only going to ever get a house show. Should Buffalo be the one that also gets the house show and the Raw, and Bangor, Maine get nothing? Or should the house shows be exclusive to places like Bangor, Maine?
So it's actually there's two ways to look at it. So I'm gonna put my cap on for two different ways. I'm gonna put my wrestling fan cap on. So as a wrestling fan, I think it's good because like we live in Syracuse, New York. Syracuse doesn't get Raws or SmackDowns, not anymore. There hasn't been a show here, for live television since I think David Arquette back in the day. So it's been a long time. So like to that point, I don't think Buffalo in that scenario should not only get a live television product, but also a non-televised show. I think the non-televised shows should go to the Syracuses, the Utica, New Yorks, the different places around the country that are considered smaller markets. But I'll put my WWE corporate hat on. Why would they want to go to smaller cities if they're not going to sell the place out that well, where they could go to bigger cities and make more money? So to me, it's a money thing. But I'm going to throw a third scenario in here that maybe not a lot of people are thinking about. This is what I would do. If you're that concerned about doing, like cutting back on house shows, and maybe you're like, what, I don't want to go to Syracuse for all these different house shows. I want to maybe go to the bigger markets. I say the hell with the bigger markets with the house shows, and maybe start maybe have NXT have like a pay-per-view in Syracuse, places like
Well,
across the
the pay per
country.
view this upcoming week is going to be in Bridgeport, Connecticut, so they're
See?
definitely not above that.
No, that's what I mean. Like, do it like for NXT. I feel like that's I look at it like think of it, and I know you're a big baseball guy. Like Syracuse doesn't have for a major league baseball team. They have a professional baseball team, but it's AAA, and NXT is the minor leagues compared to the Raw and SmackDown. So why not go to these medium-sized markets to have like an
I
NXT
mean, that's what
live
NXT
show?
does. So NXT Vengeance Day is going to be in Clarksville, Tennessee.
See?
And I don't even know. I mean, I'm pretty geographically sound here, but I don't really know
Well,
anything
because
about
you've been all
Clarksville,
over the
Tennessee.
place.
I've never been to Clarksville, Tennessee. I've been to Knoxville, and I've been to Nashville, and I've been to Memphis, right? And I know of Chattanooga even, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not familiar with Clarksville at all. I don't know what college
Probably a
is
beautiful
there.
place. I don't know it either. I'm not an expert. I've actually never been to Tennessee, but from what I've heard about the great state of Tennessee, there's a lot of beautiful the Smoky Mountains. Like it's just
And
my
maybe
dad went there. My dad was in the military, back in the day, and he was down in Tennessee and spent some time there. And he loved it down there, and it's from what I've seen, like the scenic pictures you see online and videos and stuff, it looks like a beautiful place.
I guess so. My thing when it comes to WWE going to small markets, right? WWE is unlike anything else. Maybe like the Harlem Globetrotters or something like that. But I think about, like the big time concert tours, right? And I think about the brand, and I'm wondering what is better for the brand. Like, let's use because they were recently in Bangor, Maine. I think this past weekend or the weekend before, right? And Bangor is not even, Portland, Maine. It's definitely, the small market within Maine. So you go to places like this, you wonder if it's good or bad for the brand. WWE thinks it's good for the brand because you're going out into these places where WWE doesn't normally go. But I also think that if you go to these small markets, it might also hurt the brand a little bit because let's be honest, if Taylor Swift was performing concerts in Utica, New York, and Syracuse, New York, and Binghamton, New York, and Albany, New York, and Watertown, New York, and Plattsburgh, New York, and Canton, New York, then do you think Taylor Swift would be the global phenomenon currently she is, right? What makes her this thing is because she's going to the major cities and people are traveling to the major cities and the major hubs to see her. If Taylor Swift starts playing every county fair, then Taylor Swift isn't this global thing. And that's, I guess, part of what I think about. I think about the idea that Seth Rollins and WrestleMania and Roman Reigns and these big time stadiums that they sell out. It is huge. It's a big deal. But I also think that some people who aren't wrestling fans go, why do I need to think that WrestleMania is this huge thing if I can go to my county fairgrounds in, Hershey,
Oh,
Pennsylvania?
you just poked the bear in this one. I just thought of something. So and I'm gonna bring it back to wrestling in just a second. So you are a baseball fan. So you love minor league baseball. So okay, so you get to go to minor league baseball, but it's not the major leagues. Like that's how I'm like when you said that, I'm thinking about it that way. So for me, I'm gonna spin it back around to talk about wrestling. So as you know, you've been well traveled. You've been to independent shows all over the country, and they go to a lot of these smaller areas. Like I've been to some independent shows literally locally in Auburn, New York, of all places, which is not a big area. So to me, NXT is the equivalent of that for WWE. Like they're like the WWE independent, if you think about it. Like they're the developmental for WWE. They're potential Raw and SmackDown superstars. So for me, if you're gonna have indie shows and indie feds in places like Auburn, New York, of all places, to me, I think if you're gonna take NXT on the road for television, I think that would be cool to bring them into the Syracuse market, the Utica market, and then the random market you mentioned. What is it, Clarksville, Tennessee? Places like that. That's what I think NXT should do if WWE does in fact get rid of or
I think the
scale
problem
back
though with that, what you're talking about with NXT, right? They're having trouble selling tickets outside of, they didn't during the Black and Gold, but currently it is kind of a crapshoot. It's a little difficult because NXT is not the big star, and I think that's also a thing too when it comes to these house shows. No matter what market you're going to, if you think okay, we can still go to Bangor, Maine, but you know what, we're not going to bring Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. Well, then you're not going to sell great tickets in Bangor, Maine either way. You've got to bring the big time stars. But I just wonder if some of the cachet, because I mean, that's the thing with wrestling, right? You know, Tom Brady of the world, when he made it to the NFL, he wasn't playing football in every tiny little market. That's what made him a big deal. While Hulk Hogan, for example, Hulk Hogan was wrestling in any little small town gymnasium. You'd see him at WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden. Then next week you'd see him, you know, in Liberty, New York at the Liberty High School, or you'd see him up in Alex Bay. We talked about years ago that Alex Bay hosted a Monday Night Raw. And you kind of wonder to that extent what that does, if it helps the brand by expanding and having Macho Man Randy Savage main event Monday Night Raw in Alexandria Bay, New York at a roller rink, or if it hurts the brand because people are like, well, you know, how is he a Madison Square Garden attraction if he's also, you know, a county fairgrounds attraction? Like, you can't be both. I would say one thing. I'm a fan of house shows, but the thing to me with WWE and house shows that I've always kind of disliked is the fact that they just are way too many of them. They do, like, we talk about the brand extension, right? We were talking about that on a previous segment. Well, WWE, because they have two different brands, they don't advertise it as Raw show, SmackDown show, but they're doing multiple house shows a night. They're doing not just three house shows a weekend. We're in Allentown on Saturday night, and we're in Utica on Saturday night. Like this upcoming Saturday, house show is in Utica, New York. I think there's another house show somewhere else, and NXT is hosting the pay-per-view. You know what I mean? So it's literally too much. I think here's what you need to do, WWE. The best way to do it, the most subtle way to limit the house shows, when it comes to TV, when it comes to house shows, you just put every city that you go to on the map, every city that you go to in a year, and you say, we are going to pick all of these cities one time per year. That's it. Buffalo once, Syracuse once, Albany once, Wilkes-Barre once. I went to Wilkes-Barre for 2 Raws this year and Albany for 2 Raws this year, right? You know, so that's like Buffalo's had multiple Raws. Like, these are the things, like, I believe, you know, where was WrestleMania, right? It was just in Los Angeles, right? And the Crypto.com arena, well, guess what? They've already been back there. They're already going back there. Like, you know, WrestleMania next year is in Philadelphia. I promise you, even though they're having a huge weekend at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, by SummerSlam time, the go-home show for SummerSlam is going to be back in Philadelphia or something like that. So we just need to do where we're picking the cities and we're going one time a year. And last year, Syracuse got one house show last March, and they announced in March, this is our only trip here. And this upcoming March, it appears they're getting another house show. That's great. One time per year, every single place you go. And maybe even better than that is you pick places to have TV, like, meaning you don't just come to Buffalo every year for Raw. You don't just come to Syracuse every year for a house show. I think, and I don't know why, you know, like you talked about, David Arquette was the last time Syracuse got a televised show. What if we diversified? What if Buffalo had Raw in 2023 and Syracuse had a house show? And then in 2024, Syracuse had a Raw and Buffalo had a house show. So not just we're doing once per year, but when Raw comes to Buffalo, it's going to, in 2025, it's going to be the first, or SmackDown maybe. SmackDown in Buffalo in 2025, they can advertise this is the first SmackDown in Buffalo in 4 years. I mean, that'd be crazy to say, right? And then you kind of diversify it so much so. I'm not even, you know, Portland, Maine, they've had a Raw before. Why can't they have a Raw again? And the fact that, like I said, throw every city out there. You go to every city one time per year. You switch up who gets TV and who doesn't get TV so that it's rare for everybody.
And by the
Raw
way,
coming to Syracuse one time every 4 years, but hey, Raw coming to Buffalo is one time every 4 years.
If they did that, if they came to Syracuse for a Raw or SmackDown, and yes, I don't expect them to go to the Dome, which, you know, obviously seats 50,000. I would say they're going to go to the War Memorial here locally, which, you know, I don't even know what the seating is on that. What is that, 6,000-7,000, give or take?
6,000 for a TV show, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, but that would be a hot ticket because I feel like WWE's on fire right now, and I feel like that place would be so packed to the gills. And I think that would be good for TV.
You know, you might say, well, that sounds like a small arena, but I follow WWE tickets very well, and I know that no matter what size arena, like, those are typical crowds. For example, this past week on Raw in Albany, what they sold 7,100 tickets. Now, I don't mean they sold. I mean they put up for sale 7,100. Yeah. I think they sold around 69. So, I mean, the idea of, well, 6,000 for a Raw, that's actually pretty typical.
Yeah.
Wilkes-Barre's arena holds like 9,000 without the Raw set. I think it can hold 6,800 or like 8,000 maybe with like the Raw and SmackDown sets. And sometimes they only sell like 75 to 50% of that arena. So if like I went to a Raw in Syracuse and there was only 4,000 people there, it wouldn't be the lowest attended Raw I've ever been to. You know what I mean? So even if the arena
Yeah.
wasn't sold out, it still would be like on par with some other
Well,
places.
you're
They
right,
go to
though.
Toledo, Ohio. You know
You're
what I mean?
right though, because like the size of the arena is not necessarily the biggest thing in the world. Like if you, like you said, like we've been to shows, you've been to plenty of shows too, and it's, if you get like 6,000, like if you put 6,000 in War Memorial, you're good. That's gonna look great on TV because you could pan around the entire building,
Yeah.
and guess what? You're not gonna see many empty seats, and that's what you want to show. Like it doesn't have to be a 30,000 seat arena or or like a dome
I mean,
or something.
most Raws and SmackDowns I go to, like the crowd is like around 6,000. I mean,
Exactly.
when I go to Buffalo, they curtain off the upper deck. They only sell the lower level, stuff like that. But I will say, it's just weird how they pick what they pick. Like I mentioned about Wilkes-Barre. I've been there twice this year for televised shows. They had 2 televised shows last year. I've literally been to that arena like 9 times for televised shows. But there's an arena in Allentown, Pennsylvania, the PPL Center, which is the same size arena, but actually much newer. I think it's only like 6 or 7 years old as of right now. I've been to it for hockey. It's actually like a way nicer arena. And Allentown and the Lehigh Valley area is actually a bigger area when it comes to population than Scranton Wilkes-Barre area, but yet they go there only for house shows. So I don't understand why a place like Wilkes-Barre is getting 2 televised shows a year, while a place like Allentown and Lehigh Valley has never had a televised show in an arena that I think is just as nicer and just as big. Like, Blue Cross Arena in Rochester, right? Every so often SmackDowns come through Rochester. They don't come through Syracuse. Why? Albany gets at least 2 or 3 SmackDowns a year or Raws, right? Syracuse gets none. Why? I don't know. I don't know why Worcester, Massachusetts gets Monday Night Raw, but Springfield, Massachusetts doesn't. It's stuff like that I don't really understand. And I think, like I said, to kind of put a bow
Well,
on
really
this
quick
topic,
though, Syracuse has almost 150. Like in this area in Syracuse, New York, we're 150,000 people in the city, in this area, in the surrounding area. Isn't there like 150,000 people?
No, it's more than that. That's not very good. The number you're looking at isn't impressive. 150,000 is small. The surrounding area is 600,000, which is
like
a number you would want to go off of.
But in the immediate area of Syracuse, like in the city, isn't it like 150,000, like right in the city of Syracuse?
Correct. The downtown population is 150,000. But to be fair, that isn't a good number. I will say, actually, to be fair, the population of Albany is actually smaller than that of Syracuse. The difference is, though, again, the Albany area is like closer to like 1 million. While the Syracuse area is 600,000. So Albany itself is tiny, but they have a lot of surrounding.
But I mean, I guess my point is though, with
it's big enough. It is definitely big enough.
Yeah, we can get a Raw SmackDown here,
Yes.
and fill 6,000 very easily.
I mean, it is. Yeah. The Scranton Wilkes-Barre area, Lackawanna County area is almost similar to Onondaga County.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, there's really no reason why they get multiple televised shows a year and Syracuse gets none. So I think essentially the answer to this is less house shows overall. Don't be running 2 house shows a night. Just put your best roster forward and put it in one city on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, whatever. Right? We don't need to also be doing house shows in the sense of like when they come back from Saudi Arabia or, England, we don't need to be putting on house shows like ASAP, right? We don't need, if WrestleMania is going on, they're like, oh, we noticed this past week you were in England on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Well, as soon as you come back to America, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're back at it. Like, we don't need that kind of stuff. They can have breaks around WrestleMania, right? We don't have house shows WrestleMania weekend, partly because WrestleMania takes up the whole weekend.
Yeah.
So it's okay, with like, for example, Survivor Series. After Survivor Series, there was a house show the next night in Moline, Illinois. That wasn't necessary. Those kind of things are not necessary. Eliminate those house shows first. Eliminate the house shows the night after a pay-per-view, but before a Raw. If SummerSlam's in Las Vegas, right? We don't need, or for example, SummerSlam last year was in Detroit, Michigan, a Saturday night stadium show, big time weekend. We don't need a house show that next night before I've gotten out of town while the WWE Superstore is still open in Detroit and fans are still on vacation for SummerSlam in Detroit. The talent's already taken off for a show in Dayton, Ohio. We don't need that. That's what I'm saying. We can eliminate those kind of house shows. The house shows the night before a pay-per-view or the night after a pay-per-view, or coming back from a foreign trip. And we can also eliminate house shows for cities in where we've just been there. We can eliminate house shows for the Barclays Center. You get enough TV shows a year there. We don't need you also going for non-TV events. It's stuff like that. So I'm fine with them eliminating house shows to condense the product, because to be honest with you, I think there's probably way too many house shows to begin with. So I'm fine with it from that perspective. I don't want to eliminate them. That's what brought Triple H to WWE. Triple H came to WWE solely on the fact that WCW was eliminating house shows, and he felt he couldn't become a better wrestler. I get that. But we don't need shows on top of shows on top of shows. I feel like WWE would hold a house show on Saturday morning of WrestleMania if they could, kind of thing. It's the same idea we talk about, SmackDown the night before WrestleMania could just be the Hall of Fame ceremony. We don't need more matches and one-on-one, conflicts, all the time. It's a lot. It's probably more than really needs to be.